Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andrew Stott and I'm the Emperor of Stomaria. Today I want to talk about Micronations.
This is how nations are built and empires are forged. For every nation that becomes integrated into the empire, for every territory that we acquire, for every citizen that joins us, for every drop of water we collect, for every seed that we sow, for every watt of energy we produce, for every silver bar that we stamp, we are securing our future.
So as many of our citizens and supporters will already know, Stomaria abandoned the term of micronation. We stopped using the term micronation to define ourselves back in December 2022. And the reason for this was very straightforward. Stomaria is a micronation in the very literal sense of the term, in the sense that we are a nation, we are a community that does not have sovereignty, certainly not the same level of sovereignty as the established conventional nations of the world, but we are nevertheless striving for sovereignty. We are trying to attain greater levels of self-determination and self-reliance through legal and legitimate means. We are trying to attain a de facto independence. That, to us, and to a wide swathe of the population around the world, would be what a micronation is. However, the issue is that the term micronation has been irreparably tainted by others that have taken a liking to the term and have applied it to their own projects. And this is a big problem for us, and it has always been a big problem for us. Even when we defined ourselves as a micronation, we always held the wider micronational community at arm's length, and our involvement in it only ever extended to posting updates about Stomaria on some micronational groups on Facebook, a subreddit, and a Discord server. That was the extent of our involvement in the micronational community. We never joined micronational organizations. We never attended micronational events. We never entertained the idea of having mutual recognition treaties or anything of that nature. Our involvement in the community from day one was always very limited, and over time it just became more and more obvious that defining ourselves as a micronation was simply not worth it. Now, don't get me wrong, over the years there have been self-defined micronations which we have worked with in a formal capacity. We have met them in person, we have had video calls with them, we have traded with them, we have had a real world engagement with these people, with these communities, with these nations. But even then, half of those either no longer exist or have gone completely inactive. Now, the reason that I wanted to make this video is because, in part, it is coming up to the 1-year anniversary of us abandoning the term micronation. And so I thought it would be a fun video to make, an interesting video to make, in trying to discern whether or not it was a mistake to do so. What has happened to Stomaria since we abandoned the term micronation? How far have we gone, or have we fallen short in some way? Was it an error to remove ourselves even from the limited amount of interaction we had with the micronational community? But it's also an interesting point that has come up in the last few weeks. Several people contacting us asking if they should be defining themselves as a micronation and if they should be contributing to micronational groups and forums. And so, in part, I wanted to make this video because of that. And I think it is an interesting question to ask, because there are a lot of people out there that are trying to establish something that they would initially believe to be a micronation. But as we have said more recently, in a lot of our recent content over the course of this year, you should not be confused into thinking that nation building has anything to do with micronationalism, because as we're going to see throughout this video, it just really isn't the case. So for context, Stomaria was founded in June 2019, and from June 2019 all the way up to December 2022, we defined ourselves as a micronation. But as I said earlier in this video, we always held the wider micronational community at arm's length, as I say. We didn't join micronational organizations, we didn't attend micronational events, we had no interest in mutual recognition treaties and all the rest of it. We weren't interested in playing nice with everyone that approached us. And a big part of the micronational experience, for those who eventually delve into it a little bit more, quickly realize one of the main issues with the micronational community is this obsession with war and conflict and drama, in the sense that there is no shortage of people declaring war and embargoes and sanctions and investigations on some random people on the internet. And something else that's quite prevalent is this obsession that tends to flare up now and again about purifying the micronational community by ostracizing and kicking out micronations that don't adhere to a particular brand of micronationalism. It's sometimes called, simulationists versus secessionists, or realists versus fantasists, or whatever the terminologies are. There's always an attempt by some people to try to justify their own existence by trying to kick others out of the community. Now, for our part, we've always had the same very rational position. It's not for us to determine what other people do. They can do what they like. It's, depending on where you are in the world, it's a free country. You can define yourselves as you wish. But that doesn't mean that we are obliged ourselves to engage with these kinds of micronations if we don't think they align with us, if they don't add value to your own community. If they're not on the same wavelength as you, you simply don't have to interact with them. And that was our position. That was our position from the very beginning. And I made several posts and several videos concerning this particular topic.
Because I said, people can get very overly sensitive about these sorts of things. They sort of hark on about secessionists and simulationists and how one should be destroyed and one should be excluded from the community at large. And there's these, groups or campaigns that flare up time and again, trying to purify the micronational community at large and other fruitless endeavours. And I just don't think it's worth anyone's time. Even discussing it is a bit pointless, frankly. I've made a video on this before, begrudgingly, frankly. But it really is a pointless conversation to have. If anyone wants to find themselves as a micronation, regardless of who they are, what they stand for, let them. You don't have to affiliate with it, you don't have to associate with it, you don't have to acknowledge its existence. That is the approach that we take, and that is the approach that I suspect a lot of micronations would do well to replicate and emulate, because trying to convince people that they're not a micronation or trying to force others to join your attempts to exclude others from the wider community, it really is just a pointless endeavour, and you'd be better off spending your time and energy elsewhere. I mean, we're one of the most vocal proponents of allowing as many micronations and micronationalists as want to exist for whatever reason they want to exist within the community. Get on with it, to each their own. I don't care. What I have said in the past, and what I continue to say now, is that just because a micronation has the right to exist doesn't mean I have to affiliate with it. And I don't think that's a particularly radical statement to make. Just because Meme Town exists doesn't mean that I have to associate it with any way. It doesn't mean that I can't criticise it. Just because a hardcore Stalinist micronation or a hardcore Hitlerite micronation exists doesn't mean that I can't criticise those micronations. The real thing you can do as a micronation is, rather than worrying about whether or not a micronation or your micronation is a realist micronation or a fantasy micronation or a secessionist micronation or a simulationist micronation, is just to decide what it is you are looking to do, and then look to cooperate or work with or integrate yourselves with micronations that have similar objectives to you, and take it as seriously as you do, or not as seriously as you do, depending on where you are on that spectrum.
So our approach during this period was very isolationist. We only had formal affiliations with a handful of self-defined micronations. And for everyone else, we had a largely live and let live policy towards them, in the sense that they weren't above criticism, they didn't have our respect, they weren't of any interest to us, but we weren't screaming online demanding that they be expelled from micronational groups and forums, or that they redefine themselves because they're not our brand of micronation. We had nothing like that. We were not that kind of micronation when we define ourselves as a micronation. And the evidence speaks for itself on that. I've spoken many times about this. But despite all this, despite the fact that we were isolationists on the one hand, we just kept to ourselves and we, just engaged with our own community. And on the other hand, we just ignored everyone else. We nevertheless attracted a lot of attention. And some of this was quite disparaging in the sense that there is no shortage of people out there who wouldn't think twice about lying about us, cheating us, trying to defame us, trying to undermine us in some way. And this has gone on for years. So many of our citizens and supporters will already be aware with some of the better known examples of this. You had AP from Ladonia, who failed to honour a trade agreement and kept our silver, kept our merchandise to himself for well over a year until a Stomarian citizen actually sent him the funds to return our own goods back. Or you have Travis from Westarctica, who published a libelous article about me in which he said that the British media deemed me to be a fascist and that I was being influenced by neo-Nazi and white supremacist groups. These are very obvious examples of people trying to cheat us, people trying to undermine us, people trying to defame us, people trying to destroy us in some way. Whether or not they did so intentionally or not is by the by. These things happened. But we've had this kind of nonsense levelled at us for years, since our foundation. We've had anonymous people on the internet posting all these articles, all these comments, saying how awful we are, the lies and the slander. It just builds up and has built up over the years to the point where it's gotten almost a cliche. It's almost meme-like, the kind of things that repeat time and time again, despite the fact that it's been proven to be wrong time and time again. Now, why do they do this? Who's to say? It could be jealousy, it could be boredom, it could be the thrill of being able to spread malicious lies about someone or something without any repercussions coming their way. And often it was a case of scorned individuals who had previously approached us for some kind of alliance or asking us to join their Micronational organization, and we declined the opportunity in both cases. And so they've gone off to actually publish their condemnation of Stomaria for whatever reason. And I think just as just to sidestep this a little bit, I have noticed, and I think a lot of other people had noticed as well, that if you want to get noticed within the Micronational community, a safe bet is just to mention Stomaria. You might be singing our praises about how great we are, but equally, if you just condemn us, if you say something negative about us, you will gain some kind of response, you will gain some kind of traction, because we have, for a long time, had an enormous support base, comparatively speaking, in terms of the sheer number of people that subscribe to our YouTube channel or our followers, the tens of thousands of people that have come across Stomaria. We are a well-known entity in our own right, and I think a lot of people know that, and I think a good way for people to get noticed is simply to talk about Stomaria either in a positive or negative light, knowing they're going to get some kind of reaction to that. But that's just a little side note to this story. Now, as I say, the kind of tripe, the lies, the misinformation, the slander that these people tend to publish or comment on or spread quite deliberately is very cliche. It's very meme-like. It's been repeated for years, time and time again. And it goes something like this. Their silver is fake. Well, no, it's not. They're a scam because they sell merchandise. No, we're not. They're a scam because they accept donations from their supporters. No, we're not. They're oppressing the member states of their empire. No, we're not. Andrew's family isn't real. Yes, they are. Their followings on social media aren't real. Yes, they are. And these kinds of lies just get circulated over and over again until they convince themselves that it must be true. Now, initially, when these kind of accusations did come out several years ago now, I did make a point of publicly responding to them, not on our YouTube channel or Facebook page or anything like that. These kinds of accusations typically get posted in Micronational groups or forums, what I would define as neutral ground, I suppose. But I did make a point of responding to them, and I, as you might expect, used logic, facts, reasoning to completely undermine and destroy what they were trying to insinuate, what they were trying to suggest, what they were trying to state. Because they knew they were lying about it, and I knew I was telling the truth, so it wasn't particularly difficult to do so. However, in doing so, a lot of our detractors would then turn around and go, oh, look, he's been a bit overly defensive about this, isn't he? So clearly, he's hiding something, and he's guilty. And this went on for a little while, and then probably maybe a year before I actually made the decision to abandon the term micronation and micronationalism, I decided instead, when I saw these kinds of accusations, to simply ignore them, or to block the person who's normally an anonymous troll on Reddit or Discord or Twitter or whatever else, and I would just, as I say, ignore it or block them, and then get on with the rest of my day. To which our detractors would then say something along the lines of, "Oh, look at him, what a coward. He's hiding, isn't he? He's clearly hiding something. He's clearly guilty of what we're accusing him of because he's not brave enough to engage with us, to challenge these accusations." And you can kind of see where we're going with this. It's a damned if you do and damned if you don't kind of situation. But with the latter, it's a lot more peaceful and a lot less time consuming. And so that's a lot more of the approach that I would recommend that people do take if they do find themselves in a situation. If you are presented with the unfortunate situation in which people are trying to spread malicious lies about you, it's very rarely worth responding to, because first of all, those that want to believe it are going to believe it regardless of what you actually say. And for those that actually matter, they will probably come to you and talk to you about it, in which case you can explain it to them on a one-to-one basis if needs be. But trying to engage with anonymous trolls on the internet, which will simply delete their account 2 weeks after you've had a long, detailed conversation about why they're an idiot, it's just really not worth your time. And again, this is just a little side note, a little unscripted snippet that I wanted to insert here, because it is something that I think is true not just of micronations and micronationalism and nation building, it's just online nonsense. More generally, it's better just to ignore it, to block it out, and get on with the rest of your day. I promise you, it's a lot more rewarding to be able to do that, and it is a lot more gratifying to know that the individuals promoting that kind of content about you, whatever it may be, if it is libelous, if it is a lie, if it is something that's designed to undermine you, if you don't respond to it and block it, nothing irritates them more than not getting a rise out of you. And again, that's just something to think about going forward. But to get things back on track, towards the end of 2022, we started to seriously consider whether or not it was actually worth engaging, even in a limited capacity, with the micronational community, just by posting in these groups and forums, just sharing our updates on there and then getting on with the rest of our day. Whether or not actually putting ourselves out there, identifying as a micronation, whether or not that was actually worth it. Because as I said earlier, Stomaria is looking to attain a de facto independence. We're trying to attain greater levels of self-determination and self-reliance through legal and legitimate means. This means acquiring our own land, it means growing our own food, supplying our own water, generating our energy, utilising our own money, hosting our own events and gatherings, and more besides. And none of this really has anything to do with micronations more broadly. They are different in so many ways that the only thing that really binds them together is the term micronation. There is no commonality there, and more to the point, there is no actual attempt to establish nations. You look at any of the better established, most well-known micronations in the world, many of which have been going decades. They have no interest in establishing a nation. It is a gimmick. It is a campaign. It is some kind of publicity stunt. It's just for fun, or whatever the case may be. What it is not is a genuine attempt to establish a nation. And it's this, along with some of the other points I'm about to go through, is what became one of the main issues with the term micronation to define Stomaria, because it had become quite embarrassing. I would have to introduce people to Stomaria, and I would introduce it as a micronation before having to quickly say that if they go off to look up micronationalism or micronations, the ones that they find are very unlikely to be the ones that have any kind of affiliation with us. We are not like them. Whatever you read about in terms of these meme-like micronations, these gimmicky micronations, these extremist micronations, these bizarre, quirky micronations that have absolutely nothing to do with nation building, that is not what we are. We're a micronation, but we're not like those micronations. And this kind of conversation that I had to have over and over and over again was becoming increasingly frustrating for me, because when people look up micronations and micronationalism, they don't see nation builders. They see goofballs, and that is the truth of it. They don't see anything genuine. And, you know, there's a lot of people out there that absolutely love it. They love the quirky, weird, bizarre micronations of the world, but it's not what we're doing. It's not what we are. We're not interested in that. And the people that are interested in that, They can go and follow whoever, but it's not what we are about. And that is the point. We are different. And the ability for us to try to separate Stomaria from everyone else, that was just becoming increasingly difficult as more and more people just associated Stomaria as one of the many micronations out there and could be quickly collectively lumped in with them and then dismissed along with all the others. Now, something that I have said in the past, and I stand by now, is that micronationalism is a platform. Now, just because you're on that platform obviously doesn't mean you have to associate with everyone else that is using that platform, and that is exactly the position that we took. We did not associate with 99 out of 100 micronations that we came across. We simply affiliated with a tiny select number, a handful of micronations that did align with our values and objectives. But if 99 of every 100 micronations is just doing something completely different to what we are, at what point does it become untenable for us to remain a part of that community? In the sense that what we are doing is grounded in reality, and we have taken very practical, pragmatic, and meaningful steps towards trying to attain greater levels of self-reliance and self-determination. We are actually working to build a nation, and in the next couple of years is going to be ramped up even further. If all goes according to plan, we will be throwing hundreds of thousands of pounds at this in order to take it to the next level. However, if we are just being associated and drowned out with a mob of people that have absolutely nothing to do with the nation building process, then it just becomes entirely detrimental to what we are trying to do. And that is the bottom line. And we could give any number of examples and reasons and rationale that not just we would have an issue with, but what other people from the outside looking at the micronational community, these are the kinds of issues that they will have with them. For instance, you have those that use their micronations as nothing more than single issue campaign groups or art projects or a means of self-expression complete with furries and dominatrix outfits. You have those announcing an endless tide of pointless mutual recognition treaties. You have those that have created the 10,000th version of the UN, but for micronations. You have those that print out little bits of paper on their A4 printer and expect it to have purchasing power. You have those that claim their bedroom a public park, cities, continents, entire planets, or indeed fictional planets, as their territory. You have those that claim teddy bears, chickens, or even ants as their citizens. You have those that claim their family pet is actually their head of state. You have those that have introduced laws that revolve around Crocs and toilet paper. You have those that change the Micronation's name, flag, and ideology every other week. You have those declaring wars, sanctions, embargoes, and investigations against random people on the internet. You have those that are engaging in online bullying, doxing, or Discord raiding. You have those promoting neo-Nazism, fascism, or communism. You have those that use micronations as a cover for their sick fantasies and cults that revolve around the worship of demons or the recruitment of sex slaves. And none of this obviously has anything to do with what Stomaria has built and what it is continuing to build. And this is one of the reasons that we are so popular, because people can see that what we are doing is different, and it's different in a very noticeable and meaningful way. And this is one of the reasons that our YouTube channel is by far one of the largest in the micronational community. Our Facebook page, which is where we actually started our micronational journey with just a Facebook page, that has got a larger following on there than any other micronation at all, as far as I'm aware. And this is not a coincidence, because we are different. We have carved out a massive following, a massive support base, because what we are doing is actually nation building. We are actually going out there and physically building something, whereas everyone else is just a gimmick, a meme. They're not actually striving to accomplish anything. And this is a point of frustration, I think, for a lot of people, in that they love the idea of creating a new nation, a new civilization, a new society in the modern world through voluntary affiliation, voluntary association, something that can be accomplished peacefully, legally, legitimately. And that is what we are trying to do. There is no secret to how to go about doing this. The way that we are doing it is the way to do it. And a lot of people are latching onto that. They're becoming inspired by Stomaria. I get no end of messages and emails from people who have gone, "You have inspired me to do something similar." Once I've set it up, I'm going to contact you and we're going to have some sort of affiliation or trading relationship or whatever else, or perhaps I even join Stomaria itself. But in any case, we are a beacon, a bastion of hope for the actual nation builders of the world. And I think what I wanted to highlight is that since we have left micronationalism, since we have abandoned the term micronation, since December 2022, our social media followings have reached all-time highs. And likewise, our citizenship numbers have reached all-time highs. The number of silver status bars, the money that we use within Stomaria and in the Empire, the amount of status within the Imperial Treasury is at an all-time high, and the amount in circulation across the community is at an all-time high. The amount of land, the amount of territory that's been allocated to the Empire is at an all-time high. We have had more meetings, more interactions face-to-face in the real world with not just other Stomarians, but other citizens of other member states. We have had that this year. That has been, again, at an all-time high. So we are progressing as fast and as furious as any point in our history, and if not more so, because what we are seeing over the last year is an incredible shift in turning Stomaria from 2019 to 2022, from a largely conceptual project to something that is actually boots on the ground, where we are growing our own food, we are producing our own energy, we're supplying our own water on very small scales, but we are taking those steps, and people, again, can see this, and that is what is important. Now, when it comes to micronationalism, micronationalism is a distraction. Micronationalism is not nation building. Micronationalism, as a lot of micronationalists like to proudly announce constantly, is whatever someone wants it to be. It's for everyone to interpret the micronation of their dreams in whatever way they see fit, even if it has nothing to do with building a nation. And this is the point, this is the real crux of the issue that this entire video is really leading up to. Nation building is not micronationalism, and micronationalism is not nation building. If you are genuinely interested in actually establishing a nation, establishing a community, then you want to do so without affiliating with micronationalism, because micronationalism is many, many things, but it is very, very rarely about actually building a nation. Now, with all of that said, if you did find this video to be of interest and you wanted to show your support for Stomaria, then please feel free to give this video a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll catch you in the next one.